federal immigrations and custom enforcement agents, most of them wearing masks, swooped down on a street in Lower Manhattan Tuesday afternoon and detained 9 mostly West African immigrants in this action. The ICE agents, they blew right past all those pedestrians on a street where the immigrants were allegedly selling counterfeit luxury merchandise. Canal Street, we know, is famous for that quick setup, and then they disperse if they know that maybe they're going to get caught. Well, the Department of Homeland Security said the arrested men were in the country illegally. Some of the passersby pushed back, chased the federal agents back to ICE's offices not far away. And as word spread on social media, protesters then showed up. And then more federal agents arrived in tactical gear. 4 people were arrested for assaulting law enforcement and a 5th for obstruction.
Joining us now to talk about this is immigration and civil rights attorney Jenifer Rajkumar. So, Jenifer, thank you very much for being here. Can you just explain this? Do ICE agents give people the chance to prove their citizenship before arresting them, or do they just round them up?
Well, this was very shocking. And what New Yorkers saw this week in Chinatown, it was not smart enforcement. It was authoritarian tactics. A military-style Department of Homeland Security truck rolled through Canal Street, heavily armed agents swarming street vendors. For what purpose other than fear? Mass shadowy raids like this are simply the wrong tool. They create fear and chaos. They do not create safety. And along with this, 4 US citizens were also swept up and detained, along with several undocumented people. And that is indiscriminate enforcement, not smart, targeted enforcement, which is preferred by most Americans. In fact, the federal government right now is showing that it has the wrong priority. Enforcement should focus on going after violent criminals, not people selling counterfeit bags on Canal Street. Americans care about public safety, and that's why there is broad consensus that it is acceptable to deport those undocumented immigrants convicted of violent crimes. That's where there's broad consensus, but that's not what we saw this week on Canal Street.
I am a little confused about you saying that, because apparently 6 of the 9 that were arrested had priors, were not only for being here illegally, but for counterfeiting, as well as some violent crimes, at least 6 of the 9.
That wasn't a priority, and others were also swept up in the enforcement. But what I would like to point out is the larger picture, which is that everyone on American soil deserves to be treated with dignity and due process. And what's upsetting people is that that's not really what we're seeing. That's who we are as Americans. We have to stay true to those values. And I say this as someone who led New York State's immigration response during the first Trump presidency as New York's Director of Immigration Affairs. And I led the pushback against policies that betrayed our ideals, including when the Trump administration separated children from their parents at the border, which a lot of us still remember. To this day, more than 1,000 children still haven't been reunited with their families. Can you believe that? Children crying as they were taken from their mothers and fathers. It was inhumane, it was unacceptable, it was un-American. Then we had the so-called Muslim ban, a policy that targeted people solely based on their faith. And that flies directly in the face of the sacred First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees that no one in this country should be punished or excluded because of their religion. So these are the things that we still remember. But what we also do need to bring is more order and organization to our border and to our immigration system. Right now, people are frustrated because anyone can just slip into our country, and no one likes that system of disorder. It's not fair to anyone, including immigrants themselves. I believe that we can be both compassionate and secure. Dignity and order can coexist. We can secure our border, prioritize violent offenders. We can create a fair and legal and workable pathway for immigrants to contribute, but all while staying true to our values.
In an instance like this that we saw on Tuesday, if you do get swept up in this, what do immigrants need to know? What do they need to prepare for if something like this were to happen to them?
They need attorneys. And I say this as someone who built the first in the nation immigrant legal defense program for New York State. When an immigrant has a lawyer in an immigration proceeding, their chances of success actually increased by 14 times. Everyone on American soil deserves that shot, a fair hearing, a fair lawyer, and a fair chance. A
So
lawyer.
Jenifer, I mean, but I just want to ask this because you said you were involved during the Trump first administration. How is this different? How do you describe the difference in what President Trump's policies were on deportation and ICE, but Trump Part One versus what we're seeing now?
But what we are seeing is not just Canal Street right now, it's also California, Chicago. There have recently been reports the past couple of months of these sweeping ICE raids, which seems in many ways like a continuation of Part Two. And here's the economic truth is that if America wants to stay globally competitive, we do need immigrants. 1 in 4 doctors in the country was born abroad, 45% of Fortune 500 companies. And I would like to point out that even at one time, the greats in both of our parties understood this. Of course, President JFK, he said immigrants have enriched the life of our nation, but also Ronald Reagan, very famously, used to speak about a nation, a shining city upon a hill where anyone with the will and the heart to get here would have an open door. And he was talking about immigrants. And that's very
Yeah,
far
no,
where we are right now.
understood. I mean,
Well, so,
attitudes
yeah,
have certainly changed. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I was just saying, my dad came over from Nepal, and so I would be a first generation as well, and I understand that also. There is a lot of pain, though, for people who have waited and tried to, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. You mentioned the fact that you need an attorney. My dad also sometimes acts as an interpreter for people who English is not their first language, and it's a hard, long road to get there. And these are people that have done everything the right way and are bringing value to the United States in terms of how their education is and what they're able to offer. And they're getting pushed to the back burner because of all of this that's happening.
Absolutely. And I think that's also why we need comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level to modernize asylum processing and expand our employment-based visas, which are tied to real labor needs, and to really create pathways to citizenship that make sense.
Yeah.
Jenifer,
Yes,
Rajkumar, thank you so
comprehensive.
much.
Yes, immigration reform has Congress has been fighting over that, as we know, for decades. Yeah, Jenifer, Rajkumar, thank you very much.